Hello, everyone, and welcome to the MakerDAO Scientific Governance and Risk Meeting, number 140, taking place on Thursday, May 6th at 1700 UTC. My name is Long Wisdom. I'm the governance facilitator for MakerDAO at the moment. I'm joined by a bunch of awesome Maker people. And yeah, we've got our usual sort of agenda to get through this week. We have updates from all the sort of major core units that have spun up so far. We're going to have the MIPS submission review. It's a new governance cycle, so we've got a new set of MIPs being submitted. And then we've got a segment later from Seth Ventures with the MakerDAO monthly financials for April. And then if we have extra time at the end, we'll sort of move into discussion and general QA. All right, usual caveats. Caveats, just preamble. If you want to interrupt or ask questions or comment or have comments, please do speak up. Everyone here kind of likes answering questions. It makes them feel, excited and important. Yeah, so just before we get into the agenda, I'm just going to plug kind of a recent addition we made to the call. So we recently set up an anonymous question box, like an async question box. So there's now a link, or there'll now be a link in the agenda for this meeting going forwards. If you're someone who watches this meeting on YouTube or when it's not live, and you have questions or things you want discussed, please feel free to leave them in that box. And we'll hopefully get a chance to discuss them in the next meeting or two. Cool. All right, so with that, we'll get into the weekly updates. I'll start with governance. So the executive vote from last week passed. This brought us liquidations 2.0 on the largest vault types. So this includes ETH-A, WBTC-A, ETH-B, and ETH-C, I believe, those four. And it also added DeFi Saver as an Oracle light feed, so increasing the number of light feeds, which is awesome. And it also offboarded one Oracle dark feed who decided to retire. So that was kind of good. That's kind of a big step forward, especially with liquidations 2.0. I'm sure protocol engineering will have some comments on it later as well. So polls this week, 2 polls. So first of all, adding more vaults to the liquidations 2.0 framework. This is kind of all the ERC20 vaults that aren't Uniswap LPs. I think this is sort of everything that isn't sort of one of the really important ones, or one of the ones that hasn't happened already. And that passed. And there's also a poll to decrease the UniV2 DAI USDC-A liquidation ratio from 110% to 105%, which also passed. So both of those changes will make it into the executive this week on Friday. They will be joined by the core unit budget distributions for May. So the kind of setup we're falling into is to do the monthly distributions of budgets on the first executive of the month, which is tomorrow. Also, yeah, that'll be everything except all the core units except for protocol engineering, because they had theirs already as part of the monthly cycle. So that kind of covers the governance sort of actions. To do a brief update on GovAlpha as well. DSpot have pushed a new version of the MIPS portal to the sort of live production URL. This brings some kind of cool functionality. You can now, there's some sort of advanced filtering and search functionality. And this can be combined with the tags that are on the MIPS, which allows us to construct sort of, helps us construct like views, basically lists of MIPs, basically, well, like whatever list of whatever MIPs that we want, right? So as an example, we can list accepted technical MIPs that have not yet been implemented, which can help protocol engineering kind of know what they, what's the sort of in the queue to work on. We can sort of set up a view that shows all the currently active budget sub-proposals. So it shows the latest budget from all the core units, all active declarations of intent, stuff like that. So that should be a kind of sort of improvement, and should sort of help people find the things they're looking for on that site to do with MIPs generally. So huge thank you to DSpot and to Pablo for working on that. So we've also been working with delegates a little over the last week. We sort of had a meeting, have been sort of having some async discussions since then, speaking to some of the community members that might want to be the first delegates, figuring out what GovAlpha needs to produce for the delegates, what the delegates need to produce, attempting to plan a kind of coordinated launch for delegation. So hopefully more on that as things go. We've also been working on GovAlpha's budget for the next quarter. That'll be in the forum before next Wednesday for the next governance cycle. So we've also been, so there's been a couple of other initiatives that we've sort of been pursuing as well. Eli's been speaking to Snapshot about getting set up for KR. So for those of you who are aware, Snapshot is a sort of voting system that's a lot of other protocols use. And then we've also been working on, Eli's also been working on sort of reorganizing the forum slightly again. This is kind of a, I know we've just changed it around fairly recently, but this is sort of an ongoing process to try and make it more accessible and useful. It's kind of important as it grows to not let it sort of grow too much out of control. So we're hoping to drop those in the next few days as well. And then purely on a personal note, and because a couple of you mentioned it the last few meetings in a row, the MKR compensation working group is still meeting regularly, still hoping to have something out probably on the 10th, so next Monday, but not too much more to say about that at this point. All right, any questions before I pass it on to leave Eli for forum at a glance?
For the compensation working group, I remember there was talk about trying to recruit somebody from the outside to also weigh in. I was curious if that person was ever found, and just kind of like the status of the members of the working group and stuff.
Yep, that's a good question. So yeah, we made some efforts to try and find someone external. We sort of spoke to, there were kind of a couple of references that came through. It kind of worked out that the timeline was too sort of tight to really pursue any of those realistically. We did sort of speak to some of the like VCs as well, the larger MKR holders, not quite third parties, but to try and get sort of them to provide some sort of feedback and inputs. But again, like we sort of had conversations with a couple of them, but it was they were sort of busy and the timelines were a bit tight for them to get involved really. So that left the working group being, yeah, so that left the working group being me, Derek, Planet X, and Ace ES. And it's been going fairly well so far, I think.
There's a question up the side from Aaron about delegation.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'll get Aaron. Yeah, so to be clear, there'll be a delegation contract that's set up. Like anyone, well, there'll be a delegation contract factory that'll be set up. Anyone can set that up, can use that to set up a delegate contract. You know, and they can do whatever they want. They can, you know, speak to MKR holders privately, try and convince them to delegate to them. So it will always be open for anyone to use that contract and to become delegates. The kind of stuff that I'm discussing with is more we're going to try and set it up so there are some public delegates and kind of do more not advertising exactly, but just sort of help delegates get more visibility if they need to, like sort of try and standardize some stuff like kind of statements of kind of you know, intents, like sort of personal statements from the delegates, and set up kind of like communications channels and stuff where the community can talk to them and they can talk to each other and they can kind of clearly communicate why they're voting the way they're voting. But it's all entirely opt-in, right? It's not exclusive in any way. The kind of general goal is to make it so MKR holders who aren't heavily involved in the community can kind of see some of the potential delegates and hopefully get a good idea of what they want to, or who they want to delegate to. Sorry. All right. With that, let's maybe throw it to Eli for Forum at a Glance.
Hello guys, my name is Eli and I'll be doing Forum at a Glance for you this week. So first up, the DAI slippage is down to 0.06% on a $10,000 trade. A record of 4.4 billion DAI is currently in circulation, and the total volume locked in MKR is at $12.3 billion. On to announcements. As part of its dissolvement, the Maker Foundation has transferred 84,000 MKR to governance from the development fund. When it comes to active discussions, we have ACE, who starts a conversation on key performance indicators and how they relate to MakerDAO. Another one is with governance coming into possession of a large amount of MKR, Astronaut This advocates for a cooldown period before deciding what the DAO should use it for. And the discussion around Black Thursday and potential compensation for those involved continues. On to signal requests, we have M. Rabino, who is seeking consensus around raising the DSR and the preferred mechanism of doing so. M&A Supply is looking to reduce the debt ceiling to 0 for the KNCA vault type. And lastly, we have a new set of proposed parameter changes by the MakerDAO Open Market Committee. That's it for me. Thank you very much.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Eli. All right, I think that finally wraps up governance. Let's maybe move on to protocol engineering.
Hey everybody, I'm Chris. I'm a protocol engineering team, one of the cybernetic components at MakerDAO. Playing around with some new job titles here. So the first thing I'd like to say is PSM, and then I'll pick up where Long left off. So we have 10 collateral types that we're putting in this week. So that's all the remaining collateral types that are, let's say, like standard, like normal first order collateral types, non-LP tokens, and also not stable coins. So those are Uni, Xerix, Aave, BAT, Ren BTC, LRC, Mana, Comp, KNC, and BAL. And so we're going to do those this week. And then we've been kind of working with the mandated actors and trying to figure out like the right sort of rollout for the coming weeks, which will change maybe the schedule a little bit. So next week was scheduled to do all the LP tokens. And also it's probably worth noting that we're right at the like block gas limit for what we can do in one of these spells. And Risk wanted maybe a little more time to think about stable coins. So we yanked the stable coins out so that they wouldn't contribute to the block gas limit. And we also have the LP Oracle reviews coming in, and we feel pretty confident about that code. So we're actually thinking about flipping next week to be the LP Oracle updates for all of the LP tokens. And that would give Risk a little more time to do their assessments on each one of the LP tokens. And so maybe the following week we would do all of the LP tokens. And then the week after that, we would do all of the stable coins. So the only one with liquidations on is USDT. And I should mention that the LP token for DAI USDC would also be in the stablecoin batch. So I know that's a lot to sort of like think through without, I don't know, maybe like a diagram or whatever, but we're still a little up in the air about exactly like what we want to deploy. So that's probably like 4 more weeks of liquidations 2.0 and LP Oracle updates. I think we're also doing the like other core unit budget distributions in this coming spell. And so big milestone is that liquidations 2.0 is released for all of the F and BTC, well, WBTC. So our largest collateral types, which means I think we are mostly out of the woods on liquidations 1.2 risk. In fact, I think we're probably in a pretty good situation right now. There's still, we've been putting a little work into the backstop keeper to make sure that people can kind of run that. It doesn't take a lot of people running it in order to backstop the protocol. We know of one other keeper group that's up and running, and we observed a unknown keeper in the wild that was using SushiSwap as their backstop, and they were doing the flash lending. So there's quite a bit of coverage from the keeper side, and I think Derek and the JS team will probably release the Web3 MetaMask UI by the end of the day. So anyone will be able to just show up with a MetaMask wallet. As long as you have some DAI in your wallet, you'll be able to, for any amount, just participate in liquidations if we get like a large liquidation wave. And it looks like there's like a good deal to be had. So so that's currently where we are with liquidations 2.0. And aside from that, I think we've just got a bunch of like kind of big reviews going on right now. We've got the DSS Vest contract that we've been looking at. There's the delegate voting changes to the vote proxy that we've got out for review. The Sushi Join adapter is out for audits, and we were also spending a bunch of time on the Optimism DAI bridge this week. So that's pretty much it from our side, unless anyone else on the protocol engineering team can think of something that I forgot or wants to clarify.
Yeah, you just mentioned that the DSS executive did undergo the update to Liquidations 2.0, so we should be able to start onboarding collaterals directly with Liquidations 2.0 features out of the box.
Cool.
Are there any other L2 bridges that you guys are looking at right now? ZK Sync or other?
Yeah, there are. I don't know. I think that's mostly like Bartek and Chris that have been taking a look at that. We were talking about, I'm forgetting the name of it, begins with an A. I don't know, Chris, you on the call. Yeah, we were talking about that yesterday.
So to cut a long story short, like other kind of layer 2s have native bridges like ZK Sync. It's just like, it has a lot of DAI currently. It's just, generic bridge. And yeah, when they are launched, like, generic message passing, then we can come up with some, better DAI, more native. But for now, there are no smart contracts on ZK Sync
yet, but I know that's something that's planned for something to be launched in the next probably 60 days. That does just a generic. The question I had was more towards planning of using Optimism and having the equivalent of almost an EVM Home for doing something with Maker there other than just transferring DAI around. And if ZK Sync starts to support EVM or other L2 components, do we have a plan for having homes in other L2 EVM areas?
Yeah, I mean, I think the answer is broadly yes. We haven't like in depth looked at other bridges. We're looking right now for like anything that's kind of permissionless that allows us to go across. And I will say, like for Optimism, in addition to just moving DAI across, we actually have the facility to send across like governance, like I don't know what we would say, like governance actions. So the pause proxy has the ability to sort of send a message across the bridge, and then for that message to be executed on the Optimism side. And so I think that, that'll allow us like a pretty good playground on Optimism, but it may, that methodology, if we can, we'll try and like extend it to other like more permissionless bridges. I don't know if anyone else wants to add any more to that, so. Oh, I should also mention to the DAO that I believe that hiring is going very well. We've made an offer and had a candidate accept that offer, but they won't start for a little while now. But that it's a very, we're getting very, very strong candidates. And so I just wanted to make sure that everyone, all the MKR holders knew that voting for the budget, voting for the team's budget, and the incentives that are there is having its desired effect. I think other teams are having difficulty sourcing talented people to work for them, and we seem to have people coming to us. So, so congratulations.
All right, let's maybe move on then. So that brings us to oracles. Nick, do you have an update for us this week? Wait, is Nick here? Oh, he's paranoid. Oh, I actually can't see Nick. Okay. So we'll come back to oracles. I saw Akash was unmuted there. Do you have anything to ask, Akash?
Sorry, just that microphone.
Okay, no worries. All right, let's move on to risk then. Josh.
Yep. Okay, so we are about to publish proposed parameters for liquidation 2.0 for some of the UniLPs. And as Chris mentioned, we agreed that it makes sense to make full implementations week after next. So we decided to propose parameters first for LPs that have higher debt exposure. And because the auction price curve will be a bit different this time, we decided to go with those LPs that will have similar parameters. So basically, we have three types of LPs. We have stablecoin volatile pair, then we have volatile pair, and stablecoin pair. So first, we're going to tackle stablecoin volatile unit pairs, and because the debt exposure is the biggest. And the idea is to make auction price curve a bit more flatter. And this is because those pairs are about 50% less volatile than the average collateral that Maker holds. We're also thinking to make expected duration a bit longer. So instead of 40 minutes, we aim to have this auction settled on average in 60 minutes. And this is because flash loan type auction settlement is a bit more complex here at UniLPs because you need to make a few extra steps, and we aren't quite sure how many keepers will have this implementation ready from the start. This also means we may propose a bit lower auction throughput by limiting the pending auction amount. So yeah, in general, a bit more conservative auction parameters for UniLPs. And then if we see good metrics, we can still improve it. We also started working on sushi LP risk evaluations, and we'll start with pairs which have highest pool liquidity and highest APY. And these are mostly stablecoin ETH pairs, such as DAI ETH and USDC ETH, but we'll also include Rare Bitcoin ETH because the pool is actually the biggest. So we should have these evaluations ready next week, so we can onboard them as soon as possible. The parameter proposal group also released new proposal for month of May, which is pretty light with changes this month. So we propose a few changes to stablecoin vaults, which we are kind of disabling or trying to make users to unbind their positions. Similarly, we propose with KNC token, which is being migrated to a new version, and we lowered ETH C stability fee, so that we incentivize higher usage on a safer ETH vault. And then next week, we are aiming to release some interesting models. They'll still be in beta, but in general, idea was to deploy our risk calculations to a web app, and then community will be able to check the latest risk premiums, based on the state of the vaults, on the liquidity, and all the input metrics. Yeah, basically for every collateral that Maker holds. Potentially, we'll even deploy a version where users will be able to, tweak the inputs, and then they can simulate outputs on their own. And I think that's pretty much it. Actually, there's one other thing. Next week, I think there's deadline for quarterly adjustment. So I think it's on Wednesday, and we have few new members on our team as well, who replaced some of the other ones who unfortunately couldn't devote much time. And yeah, with these new resources, we are specifically dedicating time to building this risk web app. But we also contacted some community members who are doing some awesome work with various Maker data analytics. So we decided that it makes sense they continue to get compensated. And some tools are pretty much risk related, so we decided to allocate some of our budget allocation that was meant for grants to have them compensated through that. Yeah, I think that's it now from our side.
Great, thanks, Pramesh. Anyone have any questions for Pramesh or Risk before we move on? Cool. Well, I guess I'll just say like the risk web app you mentioned pretty much sounds pretty cool. I don't get much time for it anymore, but I kind of like playing with that stuff. It's interesting.
Yeah, it's still going to be in beta, but yeah, like currently all the links we shared, everything was in Google Sheets. It's yeah, it's not really user friendly. So hopefully this will be now more interesting to see and to actually play with it, to actually see what happens if we increase debt ceiling and so on.
Cool. All right, let's move into reward finance then. Seb, you got some updates for us?
Yeah, sure. So I published my monthly report this month of the core unit. Then the financial reports that we will discuss later in this call, and the real world asset reports. Another report, maybe too much reports. On the last one, there is something that is interesting, is that I think we will move to create a real world asset committee that will be a layer between the real world finance team that provide risk assessment and that provide some real world asset reports, and governance that maybe want to have something more actionable than only risk assessments that are quite long. So we will publish some risk assessment next week. They are all more than 20 pages. So having a committee to decide what is a good asset or not, and when we should increase or decrease the debt ceiling or change stability fees, because in the near future, we might need to change some stability fees because the interest rate in the real world are not fixed always. So I think it would be great to avoid to have too much burden on MKR governance and delegate some stuff to a committee that will obviously not, the real world finance team will be part of it, but not having any say in it. On the legal side, we worked on having a small documentation to help Arnold and Porter to be up to date on what we do in Maker. Always good to see that sometimes it's quite complex to explain some simple stuff. For next week, and this week, we are mainly focusing on trying to get 4 centrifuge assets to be ready to be onboarded for the end of the month. So having the risk assessment for all of them published next week. Those are consult-free, so this one has already a risk assessment done. Arbor Trade Credit, the risk assessment is almost done. It will be published soon. Fortunafy, which is a revenue-based finance, and People's Company, which is farmland. And so the idea is to have a big batch, and obviously governance will decide which one will be onboarded and which one will not. Last item, I thought that Matthew published a lot of documentation on the trust model, on his trust model on the forum last week. So please take the time to review those documents, and we will as soon as possible. And that's about it. If you have some question, happy to answer.
So I guess I had one question. The committee you mentioned, would that work in the same way as the kind of open market committee parameter proposal group that we have currently for crypto assets?
Yeah, I think so, because we saw that the Maker Open Market Committee solved a lot of issues, because I remember last year we were spending a lot of time, not last year, but let's say in December last year or just before, we were spending a lot of time on the forum arguing on debt ceiling, stability fees, and all that stuff. now it's super quiet on that front, so we can focus on other stuffs. And yeah, so that's the kind of role of the real world asset committee, but maybe more on reading the risk assessment and making a synthesis of those and expressing an opinion. Because in the real world finance team, it's quite difficult to say, oh, this asset is not good, you shouldn't invest, or this one is super good, please invest, there is no risk at all. Because it's always balanced, it's always more difficult. So that's why we might need a community of diverse people to say, as a committee, we don't think this asset is good, or yes, we think this asset is good to invest in. Because it's too much work for each MKR token holder to digest all the reports.
Yep, I think that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I guess if anyone is interested in joining that group, they should reach out to you.
Yeah, completely. I will publish a forum post as well.
Great, thanks. Any other questions for Seb before we move on? All right, then let's maybe move on to growth for the first time, or I guess second time.
Hey everyone. Well, I post in the forum or updates. So this week we continue our work with our partners. We are like reorganizing the group and exploring new opportunities in other geographies, like for example Africa. We want to focus on Africa, more exactly in Nigeria, and we started to work with Binance because of their peer-to-peer network to expand DAI in that country as a savings currency. It's an interesting country for us because we know there's no presence of other stable coins, like there's no USDC or any other stable coin, and people in Nigeria really need a different currency than the one they have. So we started with Binance with their peer-to-peer network, but we are also starting talking with other crypto companies that after the crypto ban that they suffered, they are looking for alternatives to manage the on-off ramp of crypto, and we are like giving them options of things that we learn because in some countries of Latin America happened the same, so we have experience on that. We also are talking with different funds, and this is something I want to bring in. I wanted to bring in to the community call because to the governance call, sorry, because there are a lot of interest of funds that want to open a vault, but they want like some changes in the risk parameters. They want to open like these big vaults and mint a lot of DAI, but of course they want like a preference on the terms. So it's something that I don't know if you guys have been talking in the past about that, about if we are interested on having like special and custom made vaults for these huge funds that would open like a billion DAI vault, but with specific parameters. And in Latin America, we are also like finding a lot of partners who are exploring other side chains or layer 2 solutions because of the gas fees. Although these last weeks the gas fees had been exceptionally low, they are exploring Binance Smart Chain, Polygon, and Airscape because they are in LATAM. So I support completely what Matt said before. We have to start looking to other chains. Actually, when we were in the foundation, we worked with a lot of different chains, and we helped them to like create the creation of the bridge. So for example, RSK and Clayton are examples of those networks. But like right now, we should like be more focused on that. And it's a huge opportunity that I think we are not doing something like more proactive. So yeah, like besides having DAI on Binance Smart Chain, for example, we should like start thinking if we can do something else. That's some like general updates, but I want also to bring on these updates and the governance call the start of the week. And finally, Jen closed the integration with BitPay. This is huge because it's not just that DAI will be used to pay using BitPay, but it will also be used as a settlement currency.
Your audio is
Just
gone.
me, I think we lost Nadia. Yeah. We can see you but not hear you, Nadia, I'm afraid.
Your mic cut out, Nadia.
Okay, we'll give Nadia a second. Yeah, I saw a lot of cool questions in the sidebar while that was going, which was awesome. Maybe we'll come back to some of those questions.
I could jump in for Nadia. This is Jen from the growth team.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, Jen.
Hey, yeah, so I could just elaborate on the BitPay deal. So obviously this is really exciting for us. It's been a long time in the making, and what that immediately provides DAI is access to all of the merchants on BitPay's network. So these are big ones like Microsoft and Twitch and American Red Cross and Newegg, even Private Jets. It's a company which their CMO actually told me is one of their higher volume merchants as of late. And I guess a lot of people who are doing well in this bull cycle are riding around more often on private jets. So now if anybody wants to book a jet with their DAI, they may do so through BitPay. They also have a gift card network within their app. So all, a lot of major brands that you could think of, you can easily make purchases with DAI. They also do settlement in cryptocurrency within over 200 countries, which is really exciting. And so with that, they also have a service where you can do invoicing. So thinking about paying clients, even if you're not a merchant, but setting up an account with BitPay and doing payroll or some other type of cross-border payment through their dashboard is possible with the DAI. And they recently launched a Visa debit card, which allows you to make purchases with any of the crypto that they support, including DAI. So it's really exciting. This gives us an opportunity to work more closely with some of these big merchants that they have, like Twitch, and think about cool co-promotion opportunities as we figure out what we want to do from a marketing standpoint in the next couple months. So yeah, we're really excited and look forward to being able to actually use some of these services as a DAI holder.
Awesome.
Nadia, I don't know if you came back on, but I
think back, right? Yeah.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, thank you, Jen. Well, that was so much better that you can tell us about this integration. And well, some admin stuff. We are looking for someone in Europe to join our team. So if you know someone, or if you are interested in being part of the team, send me a message. We are also in the process of incorporating our company, because that's like a very, very important part of what we do, because we have to sign agreements with partners, so we need like a legal entity to back up those agreements. So we are on that. I hope that at the end of the month we have finally everything set up. And also we are reorganizing our CRM. This week has been awesome because we talked with the real world assets core unit and also the content core unit. And we are trying to include them into our process and also into our CRM. So we can like understand what other teams are doing and collaborate with between core units. So we are working on that. And that was it for this week.
Great. Yeah, thank you very much, Nadia and Jen. Does anyone have any questions before we move on? I saw a few in the sidebar. If anybody wants to read out any of them, please feel free. Let me see if I can dig some of them up. Yeah, so Jerry asked, would the sort of large interested parties looking for specific vault types be using specific types of collateral as well, or collaterals that we already have onboarded, I guess?
Well, collaterals that are already onboarded, but they want like different risk parameters, like a special treatment. What if they want to open like, yes, like I said, like $1 billion DAI vault? What like if we can offer them something different than we have?
Yep, I think that makes sense. Right, I don't think I can see anymore, so we'll maybe move on. Right, operational support. Who's this week?
Let me try.
Awesome.
Doing it in the chat here. I have AirPods too, so if I get cut out, please let me know. So bit of a slower week in terms of stuff that projects we're working on. Operational support, we're kind of wrapping those things up. I wanted to point out that the Know Your MIP with direct deposit module, the recording is up, so feel free to check it out. There's no Know Your MIP or collateral onboarding calls coming up. I mainly wanted to focus on the core units update. I know that there's been a lot of things happening, and just to kind of summarize, it's a really interesting moment because we're kind of slowing down in terms of the amount of new proposals that are coming in. So I kind of like to think of these in little waves. So the first wave was risk, governance, and real world finance. And those have been complete. They've received budget, they're growing, you hear all the updates. And then we just completed wave 2, which gives us a total of 7 core units at this point. And then we're coming into what I call wave 3, which is formal submission of 2 core units. And then there's one that's kind of still an RFC. So it's kind of the pace of the proposals also tell us a little something in when I think of organizational design. So while that's all happening, I think a lot of people kind of see it going through and being discussed. But when I look at how the core units are working together and what people are thinking about in terms of core units, a few kind of interesting questions and comments came up. One of them are actually around like different principles. So I noticed that some core units have sort of their vision of what they think Maker should do or where they should go and how like Maker should kind of approach it. And then another core unit kind of has, it's not a conflict as much as it is kind of just different principles or different ways to get there. So that's kind of bubbling in this slow pace, but it's been really interesting to kind of watch like what are those things and how are they being resolved? If not, like is this something we really need to kind of keep a close eye on, or if it's something that's going to resolve itself? I think one of the things I learned is sometimes like as long as we all have the same end goal, it usually gets resolved on its own. And so some people like me like to worry and think like, oh man, there's gonna be all these problems, but sometimes they do figure themselves out. So keep an eye on that. The other one is around when to consider standardizing and striving for consistency. I think when we were at wave 1, there was kind of an ask, I think it was Matt that was saying, when do we start just like, going through something like compensation or something like this, where the holders don't have to go through each of these different variations. And now that we've kind of gone through the third one, we're asking similar questions, and we've been trying to figure that out, notably around budget reporting. So different teams have done their budgets differently, and there's no like one way to do it, but we're trying to think, does it make sense for us to continue developing a better model? Should we work on one model together? Does it require consistency? This is something that's been being brought up. Then there was sort of a side interesting question, like completely on the side in a smaller group, where it was, are we allowing kind of different core units to do whatever and nurture their treasury with whatever budget they requested? So if it's a team that is requesting X amount and they want to use that fund to yield farm or something to create a bigger treasury, would that be possible? Would we allow that? What would happen there? What are the conflicts? That was really interesting because I don't think that anyone has really, said they're going to do that, but we might have a case like that. And then the last one was around, this is a much smaller one. This is just from my experience talking to individuals. A lot of the expectations we currently have, I would say, from the behaviors I observed, is we expect core units to be, in a way, like super polished, because I think we already have so many super like amazing core unit team members that are just like blowing everyone out of the park, but also, we're more familiar with them because we're more familiarized with the idea of domains. So someone's an expertise in this field and they come with like a really strong strategy and exactly how it's going to deploy and all this stuff. But there hasn't been so much room or expectation for those that are still in development. And the way that I like to kind of connect this is if you are joining a team, like a regular company, and you were getting hired, is the expectation that you're going to be like the head of that group and you're going to know exactly what to do and you're expected to give 30, 60, 90 days? Or are you kind of joining a smaller team and you're part of the strategic side of the larger group? And I think the expectations there are a little bit different. And we're just kind of starting to see that smaller group appear. So a lot of people have also asked me, okay, well, what if I want to contribute smaller, leaner pieces that are not necessarily core unit worthy, but are important and don't fit into the existing core units? What should we do there? So those have been what's going on. The only one I also want to really point out is that we now have weekly office hours with some of the core units that are participating, which is governance, protocol engineering, content production, and growth. So there's 4. If you want to just drop by, these are really informal. They're not recorded. So feel free to just drop by, ask questions that are related to their core unit. And that is it for us.
Great, thank you, Amy. Anyone have any questions for Amy or operational support, I guess, on any of those things Amy mentioned? Yeah, so I'll maybe just echo something I've perhaps said to some of you already. In that I think office hours in general is a kind of good, I guess a good like kind of tradition or habit or whatever for the core units to get into. I'm hoping like all the core units will kind of find time for it in the future. Like obviously no pressure if you don't want to, that's fine. But I think it can be really valuable to help keep channels of communications open between like core unit members and governance more widely, right? It's kind of easy to fall into the trap of like especially when you're in a core unit or you're in like the in-group, right? It's really easy to fall into the trap of feeling like, oh yeah, everyone has all the information, like everyone has like this access, everyone has the same understanding I do. So it's kind of always good to keep channels of communications open between those that are sort of more close to the protocol and those that are maybe not quite so close. So TLDR, I think that's very positive that we have more core units adopting that model. All right, let's move on. So I can't see a Nick, so I think we'll move on to MIPs updates. Who's working on that today? Is it Charles or David?
Yeah, that's me. Hello,
Charles,
everyone.
perfect. Let me make you host. There you go.
Thank you. All right, so happy Thursday, everyone. For this week's activity, we had the beginning of the first week of May's governance cycle kick off on Monday. Formal submission officially began on Monday, and it ended on Wednesday at end of day, UTC. And there were a total of 10 proposals formally submitted to this month's governance cycle of a 20 eligible. So today, after my segment, Long is going to perform the typical submission review and confirm the validity of each proposal to proceed next week to the inclusion pools. In terms of what proposals came in this cycle, we had 4 MIPs and 2 core units. So I'm just going to give a brief overview. The first one is MIP 49 staking rewards proposed by Payden. And it proposes the creation of staking rewards that would allow Maker to reward MKR holders for locking their MKR tokens in governance. The next one is an amendment to MIP 0. So this amendment is mainly just a total revamp of MIP 0, trimming down the excess, making it more clear to people, bringing it up to date, and overall just making it less intimidating for any newcomers to the proposal process. It is important to note that it doesn't break any of the pre-existing logic. It's mainly just a content and clarity improvement. The next one is a pretty exciting one, MIP 51, the monthly governance cycle. So this defines a new monthly governance cycle that provides a more efficient and accessible framework for Maker governance decisions. And the really cool thing about this is that it reduces the amount of votes that happen over the course of the month. So as of now, we have inclusion polls, a governance poll, and an executive. However, this proposal proposes that it will only have one poll, and that will be a ratification poll. So the duration will be 2 weeks, and the minimum positive participation amount would be 10,000 MKR, and it's a yes, no, abstain options like the other ones today. So definitely check that one out if you haven't taken a look. It's going to make things a lot more efficient and less taxing as a governance participant. The last one is MIP 50, the direct deposit module. It proposes an interface for Maker to interact with third-party lending protocols, enforcing a maximum variable borrow rate for selected assets that would be essentially whitelisted. Continuing on, in terms of the core units coming through this cycle, we have the strategic Marcoms led by Kathleen, and the short mission that I pulled is that its purpose is to coordinate communication across key channels and a big focus on global branding with a strong focus on marketing strategy tailored to key target markets for the growth and adoption of DAI as we progress as a DAO and more integrations become possible. So those are the 3 proposals there, highlighting the whole mission, the budget proposed, and the facilitator onboarding of Kathleen. The next one is the sustainable ecosystem scaling core unit. And the short description is that their mission is to support a decentralized, effective, and scalable economy on top of the Maker protocol that continues to push forward its growth in a sustainable manner. So onboarding new people to the DAO, making things more easy, fundraising, and all those things that make people working for the DAO that much easier. And again, the 3 proposals are attached there. As for next week, we have the inclusion polls that will go live on Monday, May 10th at 4 p.m. and end on the 13th before the governance call. And just as a friendly reminder, the inclusion polls need a specific requirement to pass. So the yes votes need to be greater than the no votes plus the default inclusion threshold, which is set to 3,000 MKR. So if this yes vote exceeds those, they're allowed to proceed to the monthly governance poll. And then on Thursday, we'll have Long for Wisdom perform that inclusion poll review to prep for the bundles governance poll happening on the following Monday. And the inclusion polls will also be going out on the same day as the governance poll as well. There are no other updates this week. There haven't been any new proposals that came through. So nothing in conception or proposal ideas. So yeah, that concludes my segment. Off to you all.
No worries. I think we did have one new proposal, which from Greg, which I thought was quite
yes,
interesting.
it's not in conception though, so that makes sense, right? I'll link to that.
Cool. Yep. So sorry, Greg's microphone light up.
Sorry. I wait till the 12th for that to go into conception, right?
I mean, it can go into RFC whenever, really. It just needs to be, the 12th is the last chance for it to go into June, if it wants to.
I'm going to go into June. David and Charles there to tell me what to do next.
Yeah, essentially it should be in conception already. The fact that you propose to the forums and on GitHub makes it in conception. It's just a matter of adding the label to be more clear for people navigating the forums. So no problem there.
Okay, so let me know if I have to do anything.
Okay, I will.
Thank you.
Yeah, just to confirm what Charles said, all those proposals that you listed will move to inclusion poll this week. Sorry, next Monday. As before, we'll kind of bundle the core unit proposals into one poll. So we'll bundle each of the three separately into their own poll, if that makes sense. So the SES will have a poll, and strategic marcoms will have their own poll. Good time. Yeah, okay, we won't dive into that. We still have a couple of things to get through, so we'll maybe leave it there for the time being. I know some community members sort of felt strongly about some of the proposals coming through this month. So if you're one of those people, or I guess or if you haven't kind of noticed this, kind of check out the forum threads for those proposals. And yeah, if you're one of the people concerned, I guess start raising awareness and yeah, spreading the word. Right. With that ends all of our sort of regular updates. But we do have the MakerDAO monthly financials from Seb Ventures. Seb.
Yeah, can you give me access to share my screen? I will give you the link to the presentation as well. So just as a reminder, you can always find all the finance stuff on finance.makerdao.network. And there is now a nice financial statement. We really like the spreadsheet, but we will not discuss that currently. So let me share my screen. Why is it here? Okay.
Still seeing a black screen so far.
Yeah, I have a kind of problem. Not sure if you... Did you hear me?
I can hear you, I just can't see your screen.
Yeah, everything is stuck on my hand. I'm not sure.
And he's gone.
Yeah, I think we lost Seb. That's okay. We'll come back to Seb shortly, I think. Oh.
Yeah, still hear you. My computer is quite broken, but no. Can you kick me out of the meeting?
Yeah, sure.
I'll try to rejoin. Just move to the next section and I will be back.
Yep. Actually, don't know if I can kick him out. Remove. Let's say that stops him rejoining. Or whatever. Okay, let's talk about so okay, cool. So we'll briefly go into, I guess, kind of QA mode. So I mentioned earlier the anonymous question box. So we kind of publicized this last week, just after I think it was just after the last meeting when Peyton set it up. Peyton, have we had any I guess anonymous questions or suggestions from the box yet?
Yeah, we actually did get one in. Let me pull up my screen here.
Oh, hang on, you might have trouble.
I don't need to share it, sorry. I just wanted to be able to read it. Their suggestion was titled "Cut Down the Core Units Presenting During the GNR Call." I'll go ahead and read it out because nothing weird in there. Since this is a governance and risk call, please only allow governance actors, SC team, risk, MIP editors, and Oracle's teams to make their presentation to the community on Thursdays. Core units like real world assets, OS, and growth can do a meeting every other Friday titled the Real World Assets, OS, and Growth Biweekly Call. The community will get more out of discussions pertaining only to governance and risk. Yeah, so obviously we just put that up. We talked about that kind of briefly during the last meeting, but also happy to entertain some discussion here. The only other suggestion was asking for $6 million, so don't really need to go into that. Not related to core units or anything, sorry.
Yeah, so yeah, we've kind of been thinking about this issue a little bit previously as well, as Peyton said, right? The one thing I'm a little bit worried about with multiple meetings is sort of where you draw the line between cutting off people from the Thursday meeting and pushing them to the auxiliary meeting or whatever. Like the justification that's kind of just governance and risk seems a bit flimsy, considering like the suggestion was including like smart contracts and oracles. So then my kind of question is, if you're going to include smart contracts and oracles, then why not reward finance, right? I think that's a risk thing. Or can have risk issues, right? So I'm a little bit skeptical about sort of drawing a line and saying like these people should be in the first meeting and the others shouldn't. But I'm kind of open to, if does anybody here sort of have feedback about that, right? Like or about this meeting generally, I guess.
I personally really like this meeting as like a weekly town hall for all the core units and stuff. So like, it's governance and risk, yes, but part of governance is having a weekly update and a place where you can de-silo, information sharing. And I think that having all the core units have a voice on a single call every week is an important kind of backbone that we should preserve at MakerDAO.
Yeah, I want to jump in there and say that, like if we put another meeting on the calendar, that's like another hour a week that the rest of us like will break off and not be writing code and stuff like that. So it is kind of nice. Maybe the solution is to change the name of it if that's the problem to, weekly town hall, because it is kind of nice to just have this one meeting where we get the whole goings on. Because I mean, even on the protocol engineering team, we are in the middle of the system, but we don't keep track of everything that's going on because we're heads down generally.
Also, I think that if people are interested in more in-depth information about specific core units or specific things like risk or specific governance decisions or specific engineering details and problems, there should be those office hour calls. That's number one. And then number two, I think that teams should be proactive about like documentation and sharing certain things that would be interesting to stakeholders. Yeah. Point being, supplemental calls are good.
I guess Shafi, did you want to read out your point as well?
Yeah, well, I just second here. I don't know if this needs to be done once a week. Maybe just every 2 weeks is fine enough. But just having a 5-minute sum up of what have been doing, what are we doing in the next 2 weeks, or what are we focusing on? Is there anything, something exciting? It doesn't need to take long. I think, like Chris is doing it for smart contracts, is for me personally exactly the right amount of information. And I totally don't like the idea of just having an update on governance and risk.
There are so many parts relevant to what we are achieving here or what we are trying to achieve. It's not only, maybe the title of the meeting is wrong. Yeah, all fine. But if we would have a second meeting, then I would go to the second meeting. And I think it's good enough to have it in this call. If this takes, I don't know, we're now at 70 minutes, it's good information for me.
I think this mixed with a combination of office hours within the specific domains provides a great opportunity for people to be able to ask questions specifically after this conference call, mixed with having a summarized setting. I mean, we're going to find ourselves in a year with 10 times the content, but we're still going to need to find a way to break off. Those office hours are going to be essential in my view. But this summary package is a great way to deliver the content in an hour, hour and a half.
Okay, I'm hearing a lot of positive sentiments, which is cool. Obviously, it's sometimes easier to share positive sentiment than is negative. So if anybody does think otherwise, please feel free to get in touch with me privately as well. It does sound like changing the name is a thing several people have suggested. So maybe that's something we can look into. All right, so let's maybe jump back to Seb if he's returned and is prepared.
Let's try. I had to reboot my computer because nothing was working. But I'm on Windows, so that's how it works. You reboot and it works again. So I'm clicking on share.
Hey, I see things.
Oh, nice. Now we are talking. So about the monthly results. So obviously I already shared the presentation and maybe we can have a discussion. I mean, everything is on chain. So I think the best thing I can do for the DAO is to share it as soon as possible, starting by obviously the speculation channel, because why not? It's there that all the alpha is. But if you think that they should share it first on governance and call, governance channel or in the forum, let me know. So on the monthly results, everything is good. The net income, we have crossed the 10 million mark for both the net income and the recurring income. So just remember the recurring income, just the net interest income and the workforce expenses. We don't take in account the PSM, which is the net trading income, and the net liquidation income, which is a liquidation, because we expect that liquidation will stop with in the future, maybe. So that's due to the fact that the net interest income grew a lot by 27%. What else can be said here? We have beginning of some workforce expenses, but not everything you could expect in April was done in April. Some expenses, especially micro unit, were done in May, even if those expenses were from March. As the MKR price grew a lot as well. Let's go to the details of the business line. So the income statement, which is the biggest one, the lending, this is the net income by business lines. So we see that over time, our net interest income grew a lot. The PSM is not that much, and liquidation income comes sometimes. Some months are good for liquidation, and sometimes not much happens. On the lending business, not much to say, although the average yield is a bit lower than last month, the previous month, so in March. That's most likely due to, maybe we made one small changes, but maybe as well the mix between all the vault facilities has changed a lot, because I remember that 2 months ago we decreased the stability fees on some smaller vaults, and now there is some usage on those. The thing is that we are still highly dependent on ETH. So this chart only has ETH A, but we also have ETH B and ETH C. So most of the income is still coming from ETH, and the rest is, well, for Bitcoin is bringing a lot of money as well, but the rest is more a low diversification. And so we, on the loan side, we have crossed the 2 billion mark, which is There is a issue here. It should be probably a typo. On the trading business, so the PSM, what was super interesting last month is for the first time someone was converting a DAI to USDC. So we have some outflows on the PSM. So those are the red lines. But soon after, there was a lot of DAI demand again. So the PSM grew again. We are not making so much money on the outflows because the fees are 4 basis points, while on the inflow from USDC to DAI, the fees are 10 basis points. It's too early to tell if Uniswap v3 will change something or not. But it's still a good amount of money, 150,000 DAI, so still good. And now the inventory of stablecoin is up to 1 billion due to the significant increase in packs as well. We have now 100 million packs token, but that was mainly one vault user. And the packs vault is not generating any fees. So that's why the rate working group, the Maker Open Market Committee we had made the decision, the proposal to decrease the debt ceiling of packs. On the liquidation front, we made a lot of money because there was one big ETH vault that was liquidated. It was quite a stressful day for some people, for others not. And at the end of the day, we burned a lot of MKR, so that was all great. For the balance sheet side, just to give you an overview, so we had at the time of the last month, we were close to 4 million. Obviously, now we are above 4 million. And we have 27% liquidity reserves. Last month, it was a trading assets. I changed it to liquidity reserves because that gives you the amount of stablecoin we have to sustain a decreased demand of DAI. So even if 27% of the DAI holder want to change from DAI to USDC packs or whatever, the price of DAI will remain the same, more or less, because some are the stablecoin built, but it should remain stable. Staying on the stablecoin market, this is a graph that shows the usage of stablecoin only on chain, only on L1 Ethereum. But you can see that there was still a growth on all stablecoin, mainly on BUSD. So the graph below is the market share. So BUSD is continuing to win market share over USDT. So I think mainly because obviously Binance is the first exchange, and there was a lot of USDT usage on Binance, but now it's going to BUSD. USDC and DAI remains constant more or less. We are at the 11th market share on volume, so since November last year. And I checked a little bit more in detail, but in February, there was a good number, 17%, but it was due mainly to one big transaction that was in one sense than the other. So it was not super meaningful. So we stay flat on the market share. So maybe that's something we need to improve going forward. But at the same time, we have already a huge liquidity pool of stablecoins. So maybe it's not the biggest problem we have currently to increase the stablecoin market share. On the risk side, everything is good on this front as well. For the first time, risk-adjusted ratio is the CET1 ratio. Is the RAAE, sorry. This is a risk-weighted assets. So we are above 1%. This is the risk of the protocol. And on the leverage ratio, which is unweighted assets, we are still growing as well. So we increased the surplus buffer more than the increase of the risk of the protocol. So that was good for the protocol as a whole. That's about it. For the MKR valuation, this is half bad news. The recurring earning yield was down from last month, but it's not due because we are making less money. We are making more money than last month. But as the MKR price increased by 100%, obviously this is not good for the recurring earning yield, which is annualized. This is just a focus on a real world asset because we have the first one. So we have 500,000, and you can see that day by day, it's changing a little bit. It's changing a little bit. So we try to see what happens if there is a redemption of a drop and what happens if there is more drop coming in the pool. Tim, you just made a question, but I am not sure what you were referring to.
Sorry, I was just making a joke.
Okay, no problem. And the last slide is on the liquidity pool. So we had quite an increase in April on the liquidity pool. So all the Uniswap related pools. So they were limited to 3 million each until beginning of April. But from there was an increase in the assets under management. So that's obviously generating a lot more fees. With Uniswap V3, maybe that will change. We will see in the coming days. I don't know if you have some questions on this report or some stuff that you want to focus more on going forward in the next few months.
I think it's an outstanding presentation.
Thanks.
So I guess I did have one question. The kind of the on-chain transfer of like stablecoins. Is that like Ethereum only, or is that other chains as well?
It's only Ethereum.
Okay.
Yeah, there is a lot of value to analyze, to get from analyzing the transactions, because it's super difficult to have a clear understanding of what is happening. For instance, we can track what is the balance of DAI and USDC and other stablecoin at each exchange. Sorry. So that can bring some knowledge, maybe tracking some exchanges in some specific markets, because obviously Binance is worldwide, but some exchanges are mainly in Asia, some exchanges are mainly in LATAM. So maybe we can track where DAI is getting more traction, but this is a lot of work.
I guess I'm also kind of curious if it would maybe make more sense to kind of focus on some specific protocols as well. Like, for example, like obviously a lot of the stablecoins are used in Uniswap in trades. Like, would it be worth comparing the Uniswap trade volume, I guess, on like DAI versus USDC versus USDT or whatever?
Yeah, and following Terra USD and LUSD liquidity, the liquidity protocol. And yeah, seeing that obviously if you have a lot of DAI on, let's say, Compound, but then you expect that Uniswap V3 will destroy Compound, or even only destroy Uniswap V2. By being more capital efficient, you can predict that the DAI demand will decrease significantly. And we have a lot of DAI on Compound and Uniswap V2, so this might be important for the protocol. Because if we have 1 billion of DAI used in Uniswap V2 and Compound, which I think is the case, and then all the transfer, all the swap are going through Uniswap V3, but if they need only, I don't know, 100 billion of DAI to do the same slippage. Oh yeah, sorry, I was speaking of Curve, thanks. Curve and Uniswap V2. So if this capital is no longer needed and people stop farming, maybe they will just repay the loan and the DAI demand will decrease. and we will make less fees. And obviously 1 billion, when you have only 3 million of loan outstanding, it's quite a lot. So that might be an issue, but I don't know yet. And I'm not planning time this month to work on that subject. Yeah, we'll maybe want to jump on the call to explain a little bit more what you are trying to say on the chat.
Yeah, no, it was just a comment on your point around the extra liquidity there. I've seen some reports that are actually done by some of actually the analytics teams out there around how they actually kind of like predicting future valuations from a whole bunch of actually cash pile that is actually accumulating from crypto, from USD, well, all the stable coins essentially, and they have done actually some back testing on in previous moments in the market when actually cash piles had accumulated, but it was actually the outflow of that accumulation into actual valuations of different protocols. So I just found this maybe something that we kind of like should keep an eye on for those for the amount of liquidity that is coming into the system, especially the unutilized liquidity. Essentially.
Yeah, makes sense.
And the other point that pointed there is whether we want also to potentially keep track of what's going on Binance Smart Chain, because there's a lot of forks for different projects. They essentially are publishing kind of grants every week for projects to go off and actually kind of work out Ethereum projects and then they do like the hype on their side to bring users, and actually there's been quite actually a bit of utilization, especially in the DEX markets, but with MakerDAO and so on.
Yes, that's true.
So,
but I decided that Binance Chain doesn't exist. So.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, I ignored myself for a long time, and then I started having people from my family that they weren't involved at all in crypto at all, saying, "Hey, I'm doing such and such farm in Binance." I say, "What? Where are you coming? Where are you coming from?" It's like you didn't even know about Ethereum like a month ago. So what's going on? So
yeah, I had the same experience. So
yeah, exactly.
Maybe we should focus more energy to look what Binance is doing. But
yeah, Binance is kind of like taking that place that EOS was supposed to be the Ethereum killer a few years ago and never realized. So it's kind of like too much, like a lot of water under the bridge actually has passed since then, and now they say like just doing exactly the same thing, but we're not really incompatible. So
cool. Okay, we're coming up on past, so you should think about wrapping up. Does anyone have any final comments, final points they'd like to make? Any final shout outs for coming meetings or anything? I guess I'll just once again plug the anonymous question box. There's a link to it in the agenda for this meeting. You'll find that on the Maker Governance Forum. If you do listen to this meeting on YouTube or recorded in some form, feel free to leave a comment, and we'll try to get to it in the next meeting.
Yeah, I'll add at the very end, I spent most of the call having a heart attack because the total value locked on DeFi Pulse dropped. But I think I figured out what their bug is. So I'm talking with them now, but if you guys just happen to check the total value locked on DeFi Pulse, don't yourselves have a heart attack. DiceStats is getting the right numbers. You can check on chain, everything is fine. I think I found the bug in their script, so.
Great, always good to know we don't have to worry about TVL plummeting.
Yes, no, I'll take the heart attacks for you. Yeah.
It's much appreciated. All right, let's leave it there for today. All right, So yeah, thanks everyone, and I'll talk to you all next week, if not before. Thanks.
Bye.